We have handed the pen to the inmates and instructed them to redraw the map of reality based entirely on their own internal feelings. Pastor John L. Widdifield and G.K. Chesterton view this shift as a severe, necessary diagnosis of a terminal philosophical disease. In the 1990s, the cultural cliff was visible on the horizon. By 2020, society drove off the edge and immediately began redefining what it means to fall. This vintage television displays a test pattern functioning as a replacement for an actual signal. In the same way, the objective signal of reality has been replaced by an artificial broadcast of lies. Current mandates require us to accept that men can become women, that language creates reality, and that physical existence must submit to internal identity. In an era defined by its claims of radical compassion, the only remaining unforgivable sin is possessing the basic optical equipment to notice any of this. Beneath every modern cultural conflict lies a single radical assumption: the belief that reality itself can be rewritten. Modernity instructs us to look within, trusting the self as the only valid authority for defining who and what we are. This diagram tracks that logic. Once the self is the sole source of truth, it assumes the role of a god. When the self is a deity, external correction is perceived as violence. Disagreement is no longer opinion, it is classified as harm. This environment trains citizens to prioritize social affirmation over their own senses. By labeling lies as compassion and confusion as truth, the system erodes the cognitive ability to distinguish what exists from what is merely asserted. We see this in the rise of literal pagan practices. People seek power in quartz crystal clusters like these, while insisting that truth is subjective. This is a state of profound bondage. These are not chains on the hands, but chains on the mind. Chesterton's historical framework provides the evidence that our modern crisis is an ancient philosophical trap. Chesterton dismisses the habit of saying a creed can be held in one century but not another. Belief depends on a man's philosophy, not the movement of the clock. He identifies the inner light, the introspective moralism favored by both Quakers and Stoics, as the specific doctrine being revived today. Chesterton points to the marble bust of Marcus Aurelius as the prime example of an unselfish egolist, a man guided by a dismal internal illumination. Aurelius obsessed over small internal things. He lacked the passionate love or hate required to ignite a moral revolution against the evils of his day. He mirrors the modern aristocrat living the simple life. Quiet self-care is easier than stopping the actual games of the amphitheater. This is the result of self-worship. If a man named Jones is told to worship the God within, it turns out Jones worships Jones. The worship of the God within is the most horrible of religions. It traps humanity in a suffocating, inescapable loop of self-obsession. The alternative pagan error is the worship of the external world. Chesterton warns that nature worship is equally dangerous. Pure external optimism leads to cruelty. If a man worships the sun, he will eventually justify burning things alive because the sun burns things alive. Nature worship inevitably finds the dark side of the god Pan. Experience and sin turn innocent nature worship into a bath of bull's blood. The ancient world faced our exact dilemma. The virtuous Stoics retreated inward, while the people who enjoyed the world were busy breaking it. Our madness stems from a collapse of boundaries. We have mashed together distinctions that were never meant to be collapsed. These pillars must be restored. God is not the world, truth is not opinion, and identity is not invention. Until these categories are separated, the theory that everything is good will remain an orgy of everything bad. The modern church became adept at keeping the peace while losing the truth. There is a distinction between two virtues. Niceness avoids truth to bypass discomfort, whereas true kindness requires telling the truth. We helped normalize and baptize this confusion. We softened what God never softened, and then we wondered why the cultural machinery began to seize. We surrendered the moral and spiritual formation of our children to systems we assumed we could trust. Ideas that required testing were instead absorbed as curriculum. Obvious truths were reclassified as harmful. Stopping the guard at the door does not produce neutrality. It guarantees an invasion. Bondage to sin scales from the personal to the cultural, and finally to the structural. Eventually, freedom is removed from the mind itself. The path to sanity is found in the heavy price of real repentance, rather than cultural innovation. Christianity offers the assertion of a divine company and a divine captain, an authoritative outer light that breaks the loop of the God within. Once God is properly placed above the world can be loved and defended without being falsely worshipped. We must recover the ability to look at this text and distinguish the path to life from the path to ruin. The world is set right by rightful external authority, not by better ideas or the consensus of the crowd. True freedom is found only in bowing to Christ the King, who is truth itself. Sanity begins the moment we acknowledge that reality was always clear and that we never possessed the authority to rewrite it.